being considered an unauthorized boarder by the HOA, posted by Motive Labrosse, with updates and drama in the comments. Well, over a decade ago, I was forced to move back in with my dad. I was only planning to stay a few months till I was financially stable enough to get my own place once again. But my dad insisted that I stay rent-free while I got my car paid off and some serious dental work done. This lasted 4 years. My dad owns a really nice place in a subdivision that had an HOA. For about 2 of those 4 years, things went fine, until a woman who I shall aptly call Karen became head of the HOA. Me and Karen had many unfortunate run-ins in the past. She would constantly ask my dad how long until I move out. Then she would always report me and my dad to the HOA for the silliest things, which the HOA would usually ignore or at best dismiss after getting our side of the story. But now that she was in control, she took direct action. The first was to declare me an unauthorized boarder after instituting a bylaw that all adults 21 and older in a household have to be registered with the HOA as a permanent resident with a minimum of 5 years that they have to stay without penalizing the homeowner. My dad refused to do any such thing because I would eventually be getting my own place. But Karen insisted, even serving him 2 years of backdated penalties for having me there. My dad ended up having to spend money on a lawyer to send her a cease and desist order because I was legally grandfathered in since I was there before the bylaw. Of course, the fines were begrudgingly dropped, but afterwards she would try to nickel and dime my dad with constant little things like me being out at all hours of the night, well, I worked late, or the way I dressed in public being inappropriate, jeans and band t-shirts mostly, and other stupid crap that most of which weren't in the bylaws. She even took to using a selfie stick over the fence to see if there was anything in the backyard violating the rules. I since moved out of there, and a year or so later, Karen was voted out of the HOA after ticking off the wrong people. Update and drama. One commenter asked OP, "I'd like to know what person held the gun to your head and said that you must move back in with your dad. Chances are, it sounds like you messed up in life, and this was the easy and convenient thing for you to do. Yes, this HOA was bad, but do a bit of self-reflecting and come to terms with the fact that this wouldn't have even been a thing if it wasn't for your life decisions." And OP fires back with, "Nice to know you're freaking psychic. If you must know, there was some bad blood between me and my at-the-time roommate's psychopath, now ex-wife, and it got to the point that I didn't feel safe living in the same apartment with her. The lease had to be broken, and it drained me out of a ton of cash. My pop was good enough to give me a temporary roof over my head. Otherwise, I'd be homeless. I was only planning on spending a couple months at my pop's place till I was on my feet, but he insisted that I stay until my car was paid off and I got some much-needed dental work done." Crazy story, and be sure not to assume things about people's situation, right? You know what they say that makes you. My HOA will learn that I absolutely live by the letter of the law. My HOA recently changed the rules limiting the amount of vehicles allowed in my driveway. I collect cars, all of which run, drive, and are registered and insured, and my household also has 4 licensed drivers. When I moved in, the rules stated only 1 Class C vehicle allowed per driveway. Well, that was fine by me since Class C vehicles don't exist. Class C vehicles were not defined in the HOA rules either. I assume whoever wrote that rule assumed since they had a Class C license, standard cars and trucks must be Class C. So I moved in, and after stuffing 2 cars, 4 motorcycles, and my camper in the garage, I placed 5 vehicles in my driveway. The letters came. I was quickly able to deflate them after asking them for the legal definition of a Class C vehicle. No fines paid. Fast forward for about a year, and the HOA proposed a rule change, now stating 3 vehicles per driveway maximum, and since 3 is more than 1 and people lack critical thinking skills, it was passed with over 85% support. Fine, 3 vehicles it is. I did some digging and I found the streets in my HOA were turned over to the city, an effort to avoid having to foot the maintenance bill, I'm sure, and as such, the HOA had no authority to stop people from parking on a public street. So I moved 2 vehicles then to my very narrow street, one in front of my house and one directly across the street in front of my neighbor's house. Now, the only vehicles that could safely drive past my home were motorcycles and the one guy with a smart car. It was glorious. My street is a main artery into and out of the neighborhood. Lots of U-turns and backtracking for folks to get home or to work. They are the ones who did the rest of the work for me. Complaints and calls to the HOA president resulted in another rule change vote. Now, my driveway is open to any amount of legally registered vehicles. It fits 9. I need more cars. Do you agree with this? I'm kind of surprised that last part worked. You can certainly park on a public street, but not usually in such a way that you block said street. Yeah, how did OP pull this off? Let me know in the comments. Torture a student and lose your whole career in the process. Posted by Nanobot0991. I work in a healthcare facility with different disciplines, and we have the main clinicians and assistants as well that do treatment. For the longest time before a pandemic, clinicians would take students from schools because they need to have some hands-on experience before they graduate and get to take their state exams. The players of this are: OP is me, Dory is a clinician teacher, Hannah is a student, Casey is another clinician, and Katie is my regional manager. So, I am the supervisor of the health clinic and am in charge of all clinicians. Even though they're fairly independent, they have to report to me, and I, in turn, report for the whole clinic. This starts with Dory. She has a lot of friends in one of the prominent universities here. She's very well connected with them, and she graduated from there. Is involved with their activities and just active in the school in general. I've known Dory for years and have worked with her before, but she was never directly under my management because her home clinic was another location she would just help out. I would hear things about her, the way she treated the assistants that worked under her, a rudeness towards other clinicians, and some sketchy stuff about basically fraud of billing for services not rendered. This is a big no in healthcare, but it happens more than you think. Anyway, I had no proof of this, and all the patients at my clinic had not voiced any complaints. Anyway, Dory had started taking students in, and she was moved at my clinic. When she came there, she was still helping at another clinic not too far away. Dory accepted a student from her university to follow her and learn from her and slowly integrate into clinical treatment. This is where Hannah enters into the picture, a very shy girl and did everything you asked of her, but because she was shy and also being a new student, she's unsure if the treatment she's administering is the appropriate one. That's why you have people like Dory to be next to you and counsel and guide you. After the first few weeks, I started noticing Hannah would be in the clinic and would be doing treatments without Dory being around for a few hours. This isn't allowed because the instructor should be around at all times to supervise their students. After a few times of noticing this, I brought Dory and H into my office and said this cannot happen and is not allowed. If it happens again, I would have to report it, and this was not something I wanted to do. If I did report it, the student would lose their clinical placement and would have to wait 6 months until the next placement, which pushes back the graduating date. A few weeks go by, and things had been fairly normal. The student would be in the clinic sooner, but would not be performing treatment. She would, however, shadow other clinicians. But Dory was still coming in later than usual. One day, as I'm walking by Hannah, I see her that she's on the billing menu. In order to be on that screen, you would have to be clocked in, otherwise the system won't allow you to do it. I call her to my office again, and I sternly tell her that I had specifically said she couldn't treat patients and she doesn't have a clock-in username and password. Hannah proceeded to tell me that Dory had told her to clock in for her and start billing patients before services were rendered. Continues to state that this had been going on for the whole time she had been a student. Now, I don't see the billing until the next day, but I don't have a clock of when the billing was submitted. I tell Hannah that this was strictly not allowed, but I need more information before I make a decision. I call Casey, the other clinician, into my office, and she proceeds to tell me that Hannah goes home crying and bawling every single night due to Dory threatening to fail her as a student if she didn't do all these things for her. Dory had used her leverage in her school to strong-arm Hannah into doing all her work while she wasn't even there. I asked Hannah if this was true, and she said yes, it was. Hannah then goes to tell me that after the first meeting with Dory, Hannah, and OP on what they shouldn't be doing, Dory brought Hannah to the side and told her, "He's cool, he knows what's really going on, but he has to say that as a manager, so keep doing it." At this point, I asked the student if any of her evaluation or letters of progress had been submitted to her school so they know she has been making progress. Hannah says that Dory has never submitted the necessary paperwork to the school and has gotten away with it because of her connections to the school. So, if I fired Dory, she would, in turn, take revenge on the student and fail her at the clinical. She would be 6 months to a year from being placed into another clinic, meaning she would be either very late or just fail and not be able to graduate. I called Katie and reported everything to her, told her my fear for the student and the constant trauma she was going through every day, crying, being threatened, and retaliated against. Katie was also fearful of this, but also worried the liability this put on the company, also how long it had been going on. So she didn't have an answer on how to handle the situation without harming the student. So here was my revenge. I started watching everything Dory did, treatments, time and complaints, and so on. One weekend, Dory had to work without her student on a Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. When I come in on Monday, I notice a patient having been to the hospital since Friday, but she had still been billed for services. I checked the clinician. It was Dory. How was she able to treat a person that wasn't even in the clinic and also be able to bill her? So I had my reasons to fire her. I had the evidence I needed, but I still wanted a bit more. I texted Dory and asked if she had seen said patient. She reported yes, she had, but also asked if she had billed less than what she should have because she would be able to bill more if I wanted. I told her that wasn't necessary and there was no way to bill more due to the patient being in the hospital the whole weekend she had billed. She knew from that moment what was going to happen. The next day, OP and Katie waited for Dory and she was fired on the spot, just for the fraud. The student thing never came up in conversation and she had no idea we had known for a while. I had another clinician write up a whole letter on what the student was doing and that she was a good clinician and has completed the necessary work to be able to graduate. Dory was unable to get any more work after that because the incident had been reported to the government and had that on her license wherever she went. Her new employers would look at the license and not want to hire someone with that on her record. Last I heard, she was working at an Amazon warehouse as a manager. From a doctorate degree to warehouse manager, after many years, I'm sure, of fraud and abuse. The best part is that the student has graduated and gotten her degree and is working in the field. She's a great clinician, has done great work in her field, and I still keep in contact with her. She's very thankful for being pulled out of that situation. Thieving manager tries to frame me for their theft. It doesn't go well for them. Posted by Asmodus. The parties involved are: the store manager is Mo, thieving assistant manager is Jay, and the lead assistant manager is Travis. This story happened around 6 years ago when I worked for a retail company I will call No-Op. Jay was well known to be a thief by the base staff and some of the lower levels of management. Unfortunately, she was a golden girl to Mo and Travis, and we never had any solid proof. We also didn't get pay docked and so on unless it was over a certain amount, which it never was. So staff never had a real incentive to try and find proof. One of Jay's favorite things to steal were vouchers for money off products or shopping because you were just supposed to rip them up and put them in the safe. There was no official way of counting these to return them to the company, so she could use them again in a different store and get away with it. This particular day was Halloween, and I was on till 4, the only till with no cameras on it. Mo came up and paid for her shopping with some gift vouchers she had received at a store manager's meeting because the store was doing really well. I served her, and no one else touched my till all day because I was the main person on the tills for this shift. We closed up for the night, and Jay took the registers to be cashed up. I went out to the pub with friends and had a good night not knowing what was coming. The next shift I'm on, Mo calls me into the office and tells me that the vouchers she used were not in the safe and she knew that it was my till. She wanted me to return the vouchers and would not press charges or put anything on my file if I just returned them immediately. I, of course, did not have them and testified as such, but she didn't believe me. I went looking everywhere, the bin under till 4 and the bins outside, under the tills and on the floor around the tills, just in case I had dropped them or put them somewhere dumb while trying to sort out cash and so on. Roughly an hour later, Jay comes in, hears what's going on, and offers to look as well. She finds them in 30 seconds flat, somewhere I had already looked. I essentially hissed out, "What a coincidence that as soon as Jay looks there, she finds it immediately. How coincidental." Seething with white fury as I knew she was now framing me for her own theft. She could have found them in the office and made it a simple mistake, but no, she made me the fall guy for her own idiocy. I tried to plead my case to Mo and Travis, stating that I wouldn't be dumb enough to steal vouchers that I knew were Mo's because I was the one who served her. One of the other team leaders, Paul, knew fine and well it was Jay and tried to tell Mo and Travis that I was being set up. But she was the golden girl and could do no wrong while my name was mud as far as they were concerned. Heck, they thought Jay had caught me in the act. This meant war. Over the next few months, I got really friendly with Jay, flirting outrageously with her and basically pretending like I really respected her and that we were good buddies. It took me a while to work my way into her trust, but once I was there, I knew I could catch her stealing and prove it. We wasted off a load of Christmas chocolate products that hadn't sold, and I put them in a bag to be put in the bin. Jay said we should take them home, against company policy and seen as stealing because they were just going to waste otherwise. We were stood underneath a camera, just outside of its range, so I said, "I don't want any, but if you want them, you can have them," and put them on a trolley just inside of the camera's range. I had studied the camera angles in great detail, preparing for a moment exactly like this. I saw her look at the camera, down at the trolley, and back to the camera before walking off to get her stuff. I warned my colleagues not to take any of the chocolate, even if offered, and had an evil grin on my face which my colleagues commented on. When Jay came down, she nonchalantly picked up the bag as if it were her shopping, offered chocolate to everyone, and walked out the door with it. Gotcha, witch. The next morning, I arrived for my shift and put on the most somber face as possible as I approached Travis. "You should check the cameras on the back door at approximately 22:21. I think you'll find what you see very interesting." He asked me to explain further, and I looked over towards where Jay was, not even 5 meters away, and looked back. "I can't go into further detail right now, but I would strongly suggest you go and look at the cameras for that time now." Travis begrudgingly walked off to do just that, and within 10 minutes, Jay was called into the office and her bag was searched. Within the hour, she was suspended pending investigation, and within the week, she was fired and barred from the store. I got a full apology from the managers who didn't believe me, who explained that they genuinely believed it was me and had no idea Jay could possibly have been a thief. Their jaws hit the floor after I explained that every member of staff knew she was a thief, but that we didn't feel like we could do anything about it. After going around asking people if this was true, I got another apology. 6 months later, I was offered training to become a team leader myself. I took it, but ended up quitting for a white-collar role in a different company before I finished my training. Sued the HOA. They towed my truck twice off my property with updates. Click the video on your screen so you find the final fallout of this one, and I'll see you there.